Good day. My name is Monique van Heerden, and I'm an educational specialist from the EduBlocks franchises here in Johannesburg. I'm a teacher, but more than that, I'm a mother to a teenager. And as we all know, teenagers know absolutely everything until it's time to put bum on chair and start studying. I'm pretty sure that might also be the scenario in your house, and that's why you're joining me today. As parents, we want to discuss the different parts of the study process in an attempt to understand and support this process of learning for our children. Just a quick overview of what you can expect in the next 45 minutes or so. We will be looking at the different learning styles and what the latest research on this topic has revealed. We also need to understand the difference between a study skill and a study technique, and how the two build on one another and are interlinked with one another. We will also be looking at a few examples of study techniques and conclude with good study methods and what we as parents can do to nurture that in our children. Let's get started with the term learning styles. Now, the term learning styles has been widely used in psychology since the 1930s. Various researchers have worked independently on the different aspects of learning styles, and that has led to some overwhelming range of learning style theories. Some of the theorists have concentrated on the way in which a student prefers to perceive information, and that has led to labels such as an auditory learner, a visual learner, even a tactile kinesthetic learner. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are inundated with a number of learning styles, as can be seen in this slide. When discussing learning styles, we need to consider an individual's preference when organizing and presenting information. Do they present an overview of what they've learned? Do they give a detailed analytical analysis? Or do they prefer to use images to present their findings? What we should remember is that people are different. Each of us have got our own preferences. And the focus here is on the word preferences. I like to compare this to eating. Some people like to eat on the right side of their mouth, others on the left side of their mouth. I personally prefer to eat quite fast. I like my food hot. But I know people that can take forever to finish a plate of food. It's a preference. But when we swallow, we all swallow the same. The same goes for learning styles. We all have a preference, but when the brain is processing and storing information, it happens the same for all of us. Scholars such as Lynn Curry, for example, have found that we learn equally well if we listen to a lecture, if we watch a movie or a video, or build a model. Some of these researchers, among others, have found that individuals retain the same amount of information, whether they are using the modality that they say helps them learn best or not. A student may indeed prefer to learn in a very particular way, but that does not mean that they learn better through that particular modality. In a book, Learning Styles, What Research Tells Teachers, the author J.C. Reef gives us an overview of the research that was done, and it indicates that students retain more or less 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, half of what they see and hear, 70% of what they say out loud, and 90% of what they can say and do. So in summary, every one of us have got a very personal preference, a style. But your style of learning is not an indication that you will be able to understand and retain information better if the information is presented in that specific modality. As teachers, like myself, we therefore rather prefer to work towards a whole brain approach. The ability of a learner to study successfully depends to a great extent on his fundamental study skills. This is his ability, for example, to concentrate, to perceive accurately, as well as his ability to remember, his memory, and then his ability to read. The difference between study skills and study techniques can be explained by using the example of a game of soccer. In order for a player to be a good soccer player, he first needs to master certain fundamental skills, such as dribbling and passing a ball. The same goes for study. There are certain foundational skills, such as concentration, perception, memory, and a reading ability that a child needs. These skills need to be strongly developed. And while we are developing these skills, and while they are being automated, the student will be taught techniques that he can apply to the game. In this instance, the game referring to an exam or a test. Mnemonics is an instruction which, to a large extent, is an instruction of a memory technique. And this should actually only be taught to a student after the skill of memory has been learned. So let's use our analogy of soccer again. Only if a student is able to have good ball control, be able to pass and receive a ball very well, will a more advanced technique such as a wall pass be taught. According to an article on the website Know About Soccer, they say that no matter how good your passing technique is, if the quality of your skill of passing is poor, your technique will not be as effective. So mnemonics training is often done without keeping the sequential fashion of learning in mind, because mnemonics is a very specific reconstruction of targeted content intended to tie the new content more closely to a learner's current knowledge base and therefore facilitate retrieval better. There's a variety of mnemonic techniques, and we are quickly going to have an overview of some of them. The first example we look at is an acronym, where we take, for example, the acronym PEMDAS to remember the order of operations. In the same way, we can make use of rhymes to, for example, remember the keys on a piano. Spelling mnemonics is something that we love to use, especially in the primary school, to explain the difference in spelling between the word desert and dessert, for example. Visual mnemonics can also be used, and I'm sure you are very familiar with using your knuckles to determine the number of days in a month. Drawing pictures to make the information clear to a student, the difference between two words clear, and also using pegs as a mnemonic. In this instance, the pegs is using a number and a picture with rhyming words as a key to unlock a memory. A truly good student will be able to use a variety of these study techniques and work towards a summary of learning in the form of a mind map. There are, however, a few problems in using mnemonics techniques only. And the first one, as we already said, is that mnemonics makes use of a memory skill, and therefore the memory skill needs to be very well developed. The next problem, as already mentioned, is that mnemonics overlook the sequential fashion of learning. By teaching mnemonic techniques as crutches only, has the result that more complex applications will be less successful. Because teaching a child to use a memory technique only is not enough to guarantee effective study, because tests and exams are not tests of memory. It's a test of knowledge and of understanding. And what better way to unpack the idea of learning than to look at Bloom's taxonomy, which actually sets out the levels of learning. It starts with remembering, memory as the first rung. Now, this is easily attained if a learner learns in a parrot fashion. But the second rung is the one of understanding. And understanding requires of a student to take what he's just memorized and explain that concept in his own words. Often our children don't have a good grasp of the language of instruction. And I think that's a huge problem in South Africa, especially where children go to school in a non-mother language. Because now they are not able to progress to a higher level of learning because they are purely relying on the first rung of learning, which is memory. We like to call this, in layman's terms, the parrot-style learners. If you thus find that a student, if your child has got a poor understanding of language and is struggling with poor reading skills, it's important that we address that first before we can expect more advanced skills such as study skills and techniques to be taught. If the reading is strong, the next step will be to ensure that the student is introduced to a variety of study techniques. EduBlocks presents both lessons in cognitive development, reading training, maths, and study methods. So now we understand that there's a number of skills that need to be taught and trained before study techniques can be introduced. We've looked at a number of techniques that can be used to study, and we've also spoken about the fact that memory alone is not enough, because an exam is not a test of memory, it's a test of knowledge. Now we want to look at how students go about in their preparations for exams when we discuss good study methods. Now, most learners have got the bad habit of studying the day before the exam. There are two serious disadvantages attached to this method of study. First of all, there's not enough time for regular practice of study skills. It's been found that within 24 hours, and this is on average, one would forget up to 80% of what you've learned. If, however, the study material is reviewed after around about 24 hours, it can take up to 7 days before 80% of the learning material is forgotten again. If another review is done at this point, it takes around about 30 days to now forget 80% again. So research has shown that if the correct pattern of overview of studied material is followed, the memory consolidation is enhanced significantly. And the overall time spent on learning is slashed dramatically. From there, the EduBlocks motto that says we want students to study smarter, not harder. There are some indications that your child is not following a sound study method, and let's discuss a few of them. The first one refers to fight or flight response. On the one side, when students feel pressure, especially during the exam time, the child might be unusually irritable, walk around like a time bomb, ready to explode at any altercation. Or the flip side of the coin is also true, where the child has never cared about the mess in his room, but now suddenly is looking for every excuse in the book to suddenly clean up his room and rearrange the cupboards. The fight or flight response. A student might also complain about going blank in the test. This is a red light. Students will be able to ramble off the information that was crammed into his mind the night before, but then goes blank during the test. This is an indication that the brain did not have enough time for revision and retention to take place. Often students complain about not having enough time. As a teacher, I can tell you, parents, that you can rest assured. Teachers set a time limit for a test with a very specific reason in mind, and they know more or less how long it will take a student to answer a question paper if they know the work. If the information was stored in the brain using the right techniques, following sound study methods, the answer will be there when the child is busy answering the question. But if the information was not stored effectively, and if the brain now needs to start looking through the volumes of work that it needed to memorize, that might cause the student to lose a lot of time and not be able to finish the test. This, combined with the fact that if a child does not have sound reading skills, he won't be able to read fast enough to complete the question bank. Planning a study schedule well in advance is a key to success. The English saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we need to give our children enough time to revise the work. Dear parents, it's crucial that we as parents take control and that we make sure that our children have enough time to study, that studying takes preference above the 1,000 extramural activities that our children want to take part in. Creating the right study environment is also part of our responsibility as parents. Does the child have access to the needed resources? Does he have his textbooks? Does the child have a proper place to work from? Is the environment conducive to effective studying? Does the child have a proper desk, a quiet room? Are we limiting younger siblings from bothering the student while he's busy? How can we support this child? Well, maybe we could limit his household activities just a little bit while he's focused on his study. Make sure that he has something healthy to eat and remind the student to take regular breaks. Because, ladies and gentlemen, dear parents, success is being prepared for that opportunity. So if you feel that your child is struggling with the basic skills that's needed for effective studying, remember we spoke about concentration skills, perceptual skills, memory skills, then you are more than welcome to contact the EduBlocks Reading and Learning Clinics. We've got a wonderful program that can develop all of these basic skills. And if you're wondering if your child's reading is on par, well, you can visit our website, edublockstutor.com. Do a reading test to determine on which level your child's reading is. And if you need to get that child's reading on par, EduBlocks will be able to do this at their Reading and Learning Clinics. If your child is ready to move on to the more advanced techniques, EduBlocks presents a study blocks course focused on the MUD model of learning. It's called Study Blocks. It can be presented in both physical sessions or in a virtual presentation. You're welcome to also visit our website, edublocks.co.za, for a clinic close to you. Preparing for tests and exams is not easy. We never said it was going to be easy, but we can make it easier if we take the time to empower our children with the skills that they need, with a variety of techniques, and with sound study methods to support this process. I want to thank you today for joining me, and I hope that the content we've shared is of value. Happy studying until we meet again.